All right, good evening, everyone. Go ahead and call to order the Water Commission meeting for 18 April 2023. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're on item number 4, citizen comment period. And I'm guessing, yep, no one here. So we'll move to item number 5, business items. So first of all, 4A, business items, is the approval of the minutes for January 17th Water Commission regular meeting. Those minutes were in your packet. So starting off, any changes to the minutes on the left? No changes? Dr. Carmen, you're good? Any changes on the right? All right, no changes on the left or the right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for January 17th?
So moved.
We have a
I'll
mo-
second then.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved for January 17th. Moving on to item B, Utility Department Monthly Activity Report. Stephen, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. In March, the city pumped 8.9 acre feet from the Edwards Aquifer, which brings the year-to-date total to 17.81 acre feet, with 579.1 acre feet available. With the Edwards Aquifer J17 well 10-day average between 6:30 and 6:40, they still are in Stage 3 restrictions, while the city of Garden Ridge remains in Stage 2 restrictions due to our alternative water source, the Trinity. The city pumped from the Trinity Aquifer 67.57 acre feet, bringing the year-to-date amount to 172.57 acre feet. All required monthly state water samples were collected and passed. Water loss has gone down since the last time to 8.5%. Total AMI notifications up from February, 293. Stage 2 restriction notifications up 161 from February. That's all I have to report for now.
Any questions on, starting on the right this time?
We've had several meetings canceled, so I just want to, if you could just remind us, how did we end up the last year with Edwards?
I believe it was like 8 acre feet left remaining.
Thank you.
Of the water loss, is there any significant identifiable sources from last month?
Just a few city leaks that we had of the service line, but then we have regular flushing of water mains and dead end lines that we have to do every month also, so that also accounts for some of the water loss. Some of the well sites use what we call a lube line also that has to lube the wells while they're turning so it don't overheat them, so we have to also make that into the equation too. So there's a couple things that we can identify, but then there's some things that we can't because it's a big system and there's fissures sometimes that are in the rock formations underneath the water lines where the water can just basically disappear sometimes until something comes up to where we find it.
Thank you.
Stephen, I'd like to follow up on that real quick, if you don't mind. Both our total unsold and accountable unsold have sort of gone up in the last 3 months. So are we worried about this trend? Are you doing anything additionally for it?
We're getting back to our leak detection on a street-by-street basis to try to identify what's going on with it. Now, I also have sometimes with, even though our water or amount is going up, usually sometimes whenever you have less pumping, like in the winter times, your usage your percentage will go up, but the lower you, how do I put that? The higher you pump, the lower sometimes your percentage goes, but then unless you start doing higher pumping, then did that backwards. The higher pumping, the lower your percentage go, but the lower your percentage goes, the higher it seems to go sometimes. If you look on the, let's see. If you look on it, it does show that it's a little bit higher than this time last year.
Yeah, it's,
But,
I was looking at the chart there on the pumping report, and I
yes.
was just looking at the column 3 and column 4, and the last 3 entries there are kind of larger than normal.
Yes.
I shouldn't say larger than normal. Larger than normal for us, because we have a very efficient system, but I
Yes.
just I want to know if you were concerned about it. I think the answer is no, we're working on it.
Yeah, I'm concerned about it. So like I said, we're going to be starting to go back and looking for more possible leaks. There could be a fire hydrant somewhere that might not be closing all the way and hasn't shown up yet. So it's a lot of just investigating street by street.
Thanks. Sorry, Dr. Carmichael, over to you.
On the AMI notifications, it seems like you had a pretty good increase, and also your abnormal use had a fairly good increase from last month. Any reason, have any idea of why?
Sometimes it's the AMI system's just catching more. Sprinklers are starting to be used more, so it'll show out also abnormal from the last couple months that we had a winter where the usage has been very little. So everybody start turning on their irrigation systems. It's going to detect that something's out of the ordinary, so that could be also an abnormal trigger.
And following up on the AMI notification with the rate increase they're doing, they talked about they wasn't notified. Is there any system in place that we can go out and have check, make sure everyone's getting their AMI notifications? So you don't have one that has a leak, and then we find out there had been no notification for months.
Not that I know of. I do know that we do go on there manually, and we seek out some of the highest triggers that are going on a day-by-day basis. And if we see somebody using, say, like 50 gallons an hour, we'll make a work order and go out there and let them know. Because sometimes not everybody's on the AMI system, so we have to assume that they might not be getting notification also.
One going by again, but the leak adjustment, they said they're on the system, but they just never got notified. I'm talking about, there might be other people out there too, where they never, according to they never actually got a phone call either, did they?
Yes, no.
Okay, so they wasn't notified. No one notified them at all.
No,
So everything kind of failed in that one.
yes.
Okay.
Stephen, I would like to follow up on Commissioner Stone's question also, because we had I'm trying to find it. Oh, yeah, the stage 2 restriction alerts have gone up pretty significantly in March. I would assume this trend is going to continue as it heats up and people want to save all the new flowers they planted and everything. So do we have a plan on how we're going to do that? Is it, I know you guys do a pretty good, are we going to get more active with the communication or anything like that? Probably be a little proactive on it, perhaps.
We do have, we did make up some signs to put up next to the dumpster days, letting people know that it's stage 2 also. We do have quite a few days that I believe our city marquee sign on 2252 is a reminder that stage 2 restrictions are also in effect. But we don't have the manpower to notify everybody or knock on everybody's door, so to speak, and let them know also.
No, I wouldn't, I can't imagine a scenario where we'd have you guys knocking door to door. That's kind of crazy, but good to hear that you're being proactive and trying to use the stuff available. Thanks. All right, any other questions for Mr. Steinitz? Okay, great, thanks, Stephen, appreciate all that. All right, we're to item B2 now. Items applicable to Water Commission is discussed in the January, February, March, and April city council regular meetings. We actually covered the January city council meeting in our January water commission meeting, so I'm going to jump to February unless you guys want me to go backwards there. On February, let's see here, there was, the audit report was given in the February city council meeting. There's some good information about the water, or the utilities department in there, and the water company in particular, about assets versus liabilities, and our net position, how it's increased. There's a lot of good information there. Starts around page 145, if you want to go back to that, to the packet for that February report. And the audit report turned out we did very well on that. There's less than 10 adjustments, which is kind of amazing, actually. Other things that were brought up in the February meeting, the warming center was used there. There was some power loss from ice and trees and everything, and City Council noted that the water department did a really good job during that hard freeze, maintaining all the pumps, tracking, and everything else. Let's see here. That was what I have for February. I'm going to keep rolling, and then I'll double check to see if I missed anything. I do have a lot of notes about other things that are going on in the city, including the Charter Commission and stuff like that. I'm not going to get in the details of that, but if you want to know, you can ask me. It appears that in the March report there, Stephen talked about having to replace one of the pumps in our system, and that one of those fire hydrant leaks that you were talking about that you caught recently. And Councilmember Valdez did ask about any new maintenance going on there, and you said we're going to be working on the Trinity pump soon. Has that started?
Yeah, we're looking at getting the Trinity pump up at the shop up there, having the motor and pump replaced. I'm hoping that we possibly will have that started on Monday. The supplier said that the electric wire that they've been waiting on finally got in, and that particular pump and motor has been in the ground for like 12 years, well past its prime. And we do have a motor that we've had for that 12 years sitting in the shop that was supposed to be a backup motor, but for us to put that in, we wouldn't have any type of warranty or anything on that. So we're going to go with getting a new motor and leaving that in our possession for an emergency backup if we have to do something.
Thanks, Stephen. We did hear in the March, I can't remember who brought it up, but they talked about there are developers that are asking about water and sewer for the city of Garden Ridge, and I know city staff is working with Schertz, still in discussions about tying in our sewage line. And then in April is a fairly short meeting. City council was here. It was a long day for them, so got a little bit shortened, but to bring up things, the city engineer has been working on the 2252 project, and we finally got some bids in. All the engineering's been going on over the last couple months and getting close, I think, to getting some work done on that. And on the consent agenda, you'll notice that Commissioner Halterman's not here anymore. He moved to Alaska, and that was on the consent agenda in April, which was approved without modification. All right. So that was a lot of information. First, I'm going to go to city staff. Ms. Kane, did I miss anything?
Did. I think you covered it well.
All right, thanks. Any questions, starting on the left? Mr. Stone? Dr. Carmichael? On the right? No? All good? All right. So that concludes item 2 there, and we're going to go back to Mr. Steinmetz there on item number 3, pumping and recovery study of the city's water storage. Over to you, Stephen.
Yes, as you can see, I provided you with some charts straight off of our SCADA system. And I put that to where we had, to where it was at our highest, our most driest months last year, July and August. And it shows basically the start times and cutoff times of the pumps and wells. And we were looking at possibly moving the stage watering to 11 o'clock. That was correct, right, 11? We're possibly looking at pushing it farther down in the morning?
Yes, later in the morning is what was brought up at the last meeting, yes.
Okay. Our primary well site during the night is the Schoenthal, since it's the biggest. It's a 750,000 gallon one. So normally we have that, we want to get that pre-filled up before anybody goes to bed at night. So as you can see, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, it could be, sometimes it does 3 o'clock, sometimes it comes on at 5 o'clock when it'll be kicked on due to the demand of the sprinkler systems in the morning. So when you see, basically, it'll run for a while, but when it gets down to the bottom, it will basically about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it'll start tapering off, and then it'll start to recover. Sometimes the recovery on that one could take to 2 o'clock. Sometimes it could be 3 or 4 o'clock when it recovers. If you look at the 1 million gallon tank, the orange on the bottom, you can also see at the bottom where about 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the morning to about 7 o'clock, it just basically, it's getting pumped out, it's pumping as fast as it's leaving the tank. Then you have some highs, max, minimum, and averages down there. During the daytime, we'll use the municipal up in the blue to pick up the slack, and then green during the water stages, that's the Edwards, so we wanted to use that as little as possible until we really needed it. So you'll see green's not used as much, just to top off the wells to give the other ones a little bit of a break. I included a summary in there of what we see. Did you want me to read that off, or?
No, sir, I don't think so. I think when I read through this, I think what I'm reading is that our pumps are working hard, and your concern is about downtime. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add on this one?
No.
Okay. So I have one question, but I'll go ahead and turn it over here on the right first to see what questions we have from, should I have skipped you? I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. We'll come back to the vice chair. Is there a question? Any on the left?
Thank you for the analysis. Looks good. If we lose a well, how's that going to impact this?
It depends. If we were to lose 3009 2252 is still a very powerful well site it's a real workhorse on it. Only problem is we're limited to how much we can take out of that one since it's the Edwards.
Well, then if we lost one of the other systems, so we'd have to turn to the Edwards to keep the flow going,
Yes.
and that would draw down our allocation.
Yes. Example is when we're going to be pulling the well up here at the Trinity, we're going to be basically using the Schoenthal plant on the 750,000 gallon tank and the Edwards. But since we have a good supply of Edwards, it's not really going to be too much of a hit to our system. But we don't usually run all of them at once, so we always have 2 other well sites as a backup. So we have plenty of water. It's just if we had something really bad happen, then it might affect us.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready now, Vice Chair? Go ahead, please, sir.
All right, so when on the data, when they talk about well on, you're talking about multiple well pumps? Are you doing one pump at a time?
Yes.
So when we talk about if we could lose a well, what are we talking? Losing one of the pumps? Or are you talking about losing access to the whole well site?
It could be either, or if you lost access to the entire site, then yeah, there would be a problem. But most of the time, you have two wells, two pumps. Only have one well up here at Trinity though, so that'd be a big hit. But it's never just one all the way down unless there's even if we have a power outage, we usually have our backup generators keeping everything going. So it'd have to be an extreme event for that to happen.
Okay, and then the next question, when we're talking about the pumps on, we're talking about the boost pumps to pressurize the system to ultimately fill the elevated tank, the million-gallon tank, is that correct?
Yes.
Do they typically operate with both boost pumps for each site when they do that, or one?
Normally one, but whenever demand's high, I'll kick another booster pump on another site to help it out. And usually just two pumps usually get it up to where it needs to be, fills it to our stopping point. But that's a really heavy demand like you would see during the early morning hours.
Okay, and when we're looking at this, I know the well sites have triggers on them. In other words, a tank gets below a certain level, it can trigger the pump on. Are those automated, or is each one of these decisions manually made? Are you having someone on the staff decide we're going to turn on this pump, or is it turning on when a level falls below an indicator?
Well, they're all basically on auto. There's a primary well site, which is the Schoenthal, that has the most water in storage. And then the Trinity, the municipal, is the backup to that. And then the Edwards 2252 is the final one. But yeah, they all sit on auto. If we see that we think that one needs to be helped out, we'll manually kick it on to help it out.
Okay, appreciate that. When I see flat lines in here, I should assume then boost pumps and well pumps are off.
Correct.
And the tank is full, okay? When I see the slope of the line going down, I should assume that one of both, either the pumps and the wells are on.
Correct.
But when it reaches a valley and comes back up, I'm assuming the well pump is still on, but the boost pump is off.
Correct.
Okay. And then would it be fair to say, as I look at this data, that since it's giving me the data in heights, I need to be pretty careful? We really should be looking at the volumes that are changing. In other words, the municipal tank is much smaller, so it's going to change more rapidly than, for instance, the million-gallon tank, which is 8 feet of change for a significant amount of water. Do you know what that volume would represent and that amount of change?
Not this time.
But it would be fair to say it's a significantly greater amount of water.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm going to tell you the story I get from this, and I would like you to tell me where I'm wrong and if I'm reading it correctly. And so I'm looking at the July one, just so we have a common one to compare. And I'm going to start at 6 p.m., so kind of going out of order. But around that 5 to 6 p.m. time frame, we're seeing that the million-gallon tank is essentially full. And at 6 p.m., all the pumps are off. All the boost pumps, well pumps are off. Is that correct?
Correct.
So then from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., what we're seeing with the drawdown on the million-gallon tank is just the normal residential usage at that time of day. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay, so then when we reach the irrigation window, which is 8 to 11 p.m., that should be the time where we have the highest demand in the system. And what we are seeing, though, is that the million-gallon tank is slightly starting to recover because we have the municipal pump on and pumping quite a bit of water, and you've put on the Edwards as well.
Yes.
Okay, so it's important to remember during that time period, the actual water usage in the city is high. We're just pumping out a lot of water from the wells. So at 9 to 10 p.m., around 10 p.m. anyway, all the pumps are off again except the well pump in Trinity. at Municipal. So we're starting to recover that tank, but from that time period, from about 10 PM on, what we're seeing is the million-gallon tank is decreasing as water is pulled out of the system, and that irrigation cutoff time is around 11 PM. So I imagine there are people who either intentionally or just by neglect are still running their irrigation after 11 PM. But there's also still some regular water usage. So what I'm seeing between 11 and 12 is that slope is flattening out. So we're not, the tank is down, but we're not drawing much water out of it. So if I go back to 12 AM on the other side, and I realize you can't really do that because we're going backwards in time, but just assuming it's similar pattern, it's relatively flat slope. So again, not much water is coming out of the tank, but not much is going in either. So we start turning on the pumps again a little bit after 1 AM, but that's because at that point, the million-gallon tank has now got below the level that it would trigger the auto system to turn on. So it doesn't necessarily represent strong demand. It's just that's at the point, that's the lag in the system before the pumps turn on to start refilling it. And then what I see is the Trinity is working very hard, pumping a lot of water out, and it's pumping it out, bringing water out of the well slower than it's coming out of the main system from the million-gallon tank. Because what we're seeing is the million-gallon tank is slowly filling, but the tank on Shine Tall, the Trinity tank, is decreasing quite a bit. So we're using that water basically to provide to our system for irrigation. The irrigation should then shut off around 8 AM. And in fact, you see that long before then, the million-gallon tank is already starting to recover. There is another dip in the afternoon, which is expected as high residential demand picks up at that time of day. But then, as we go into the nighttime irrigation from 8 to 11, again, we're pumping out of the wells and we're refilling those tanks. So as I look at the story, I'm seeing that we've got plenty of water because there's significant time where no pumps are on, and that there is the possibility of switching around the times on when they are on in order to adjust the downtime on the pumps. Would you agree with that?
For the recovery?
Yes. In other words, there's decisions that have been made as to when to do the recovery and when to refill it, and that's not necessarily a consequence of our irrigation demand. It's just that's a convenient time to do it. So you're actually refilling the tank during the evening irrigation window. That million-gallon tank is increasing in its volume while we're putting a lot of water out into the system. So we're actually pumping quite a bit out of the ground during that time period, more than is being used. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure that's correct. I'm asking your interpretation.
Well, usually, like I said, the municipal one up here is the workhorse during the day and throughout the night, while the 750-gallon one basically refills throughout the entire day for the most part. That one only fills only about 500, 530, 550, say, gallons per minute to fill a 750,000-gallon tank. We don't take that all the way down because it'll be that much longer to actually fill the entire tank, and we like to have that for a good reserve, just in case something were to happen. That's kind of how we play this, is because we want to have a backup reserve if we did have to have an emergency for any type of situation, a big main break, like say a big 12-inch main break. That would be significant, especially if it wasn't turned off for a while. It does take time for us to get out here and turn things off. But yeah, a lot of this is done this way for pressure reasons and for just in case there is an emergency. I mean, we could probably dabble with or tweak times, but it would take a little bit of time to figure that out. I don't know if doing it during stages would be a good thing. It might be better to do it when we have plenty, in the year of plenty, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, it can be tweaked, it can be worked on. Just right now probably wouldn't be the time to do it.
And don't misunderstand me, I'm not recommending that you do that. I'm just saying the data that I'm looking at is telling me more about the refill time of the pumps, and it doesn't directly correlate to the demand on the system. So if we start asking questions like, how is the irrigation window affecting this? I'm not sure it's completely displayed in what we're looking at. In other words, we have significant times where with 2 well pumps operating, we're able to supply that demand and fill the tank. Now, that still means you got a lot of pumps running, and if you lost one, it would be a problem. So I'm not advocating change on that. I'm just wondering, in other words, if we did, well, I don't want to get into that because that's a whole different agenda item. But I'm just trying to understand the chart, and I think I understand that what we're saying is we plan this out using the Trinity well, the municipal well, to basically absorb the surges and give that Changtao well time to work slower because it's a slower producing well.
Yes.
And then still have time for it to be off. So I think that's pretty fair to indicate we don't want major changes, but I don't want to directly tie that to the irrigation demand windows. I'm not sure those are the same thing. That's just as I'm reading this. Thank you.
I mean, yeah, we can look at it. I mean, these might not be the best representation of the system. It probably would have been better to actually have like a 2-day stack chart, which will show actually more. But yeah, I'm open to looking at this and seeing what we can do.
I think this is great. I'm not criticizing at all. It's wonderful information. It's something I haven't had in the 8 years I've been doing this. I just would also like, at some point, to take a look at the actual volume of water that's being distributed through the system. So no criticism here. I'm not asking you to look up
Oh, I
anything
know.
else.
I don't think anything.
I think this is fantastic. Just for our consideration, it tells an important story, but it doesn't necessarily completely answer the question we're looking for. But it's important. Thank you, Stephen. Again, no criticism is intended.
Oh, I
This is
don't
great.
think it's criticism.
A short question. Do we pay different electrical rates during a 24-hour period, or that's question one, and does the rate of usage trigger any incremental changes in our electricity rate? Tying it in with running the pumps at different times during the day, if we were able to do that, would that affect our electrical bill?
I would have to get with our finance person that looks over the bills, and we'd have to kind of do a study on the times that the well sites are kicked on.
We spend just on the well sites anywhere, I'd say about $150,000 to about $170,000 a year, just on electrical. We don't get different rates for different, it's the same rate that we pay for this building, you're paying in your residences, it's the same rate.
It's flat during the day, it's a
Yeah,
flat rate,
it's- yeah.
independent of time and demand, I guess, is what I'm asking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but in that regard, I remember last year at least getting lots of notices from CPS about reducing electrical consumption in the afternoons because the residential ACs are kicking in big time and pulling down the system, so.
Any other questions from anyone? I think the point here is, I think that the city staff certainly did quite a bit of analysis on this stuff to show us specific to, I don't know, pump rest cycles, you'd call it, and that's why there's probably no change warranted in any watering points at this time, certainly, and we can continue to look at it if we see the need, but right now, certainly, I think this data tells us that we might want to hold off any changes, certainly, until maybe stage restrictions are in a better place, or perhaps a little bit more information is gained there. So I'm good with this unless there's any other follow-ups from anybody. Nope. All right. That closes item B. We're to item C, recommendations, and recommendation number 1, request for water leak adjustment for 9902 Michelle Hill for the billing period of December 22nd to January 23rd. Sorry, December 22nd, 2022 to January 23rd, 2023. And we'll review and make recommendations regarding this request. So, Stephen, over to you again to tell us about this water request. A lot of talking tonight, man.
As you can see, they had a significant leak starting on 12/22/22, and it ran quite a bit all the way to, the first time it stopped was on 12/31/22, and it stopped for 3 hours, and then it came back on all the way up to 1/2/23, and then it stopped for like 20 hours, then came back on again. I wrote the resident some questions concerning that, and she said that they did not receive any notifications, and you can tell by the AMI system that last time they've ever received a notification was in August of last year. They couldn't get it fixed at a certain time, so they had to turn the water back on because they couldn't go without the water for I guess medical reasons perhaps. But their water usage is basically nothing for the most part, and then they had a 140,000-gallon bill. I was going to recommend for one, they didn't get notification, and 2, they had issues trying to get it repaired, that they get a partial adjustment for a credit of $1,500, and they pay $777.75. Yeah, that's all I really have to on this one.
Thank you, sir. All right. So just to follow up there, so you see the water bill is for 149 and the leak was 109 there. You can see the notes for the credit and the customer consumption being 40,000. And that's all on your worksheet there. So any questions? And that's the second to last page in your packet if you're looking for it for the overall recommendation. Any questions starting on the left? No questions from Commissioner Stone, Carmichael? Thinking?
I'm still a little concerned about the notification or lack of notification. But that's it.
I was going to put that on an agenda item for later.
Okay, we'll get to that action item in a bit, but I hear what you're saying. We'll get to that.
On the question of notification, I've got this printout that shows the different dates. It says human machine. What is the significance of that?
Answering machine, or just whatever voice system they have on their cell phones.
So in this case, okay, I understand that. I didn't know if that was outgoing or that's on the receiving end. So they were not set up to receive any kind of automated alerts via cell phone or anything?
I believe they were at Michelle.
Until August of '22.
So the reason why they may not have received a notification is because if they set up their profile without a phone number or an email, which could have happened because I saw when she set up her profile after October of '22, she may have forgotten to put that information in, and it will override whatever contact data we have. And so we actually have the vendor, an email to the vendor asking that question for her profile, because we can't tell, we don't have access to that, to their private profile information.
Following on to that, this was a significant leak, and it was finally determined when the residents saw water running down the street. But that water would have likely been running for days down the street. I didn't go back and look at the weather at that time, but I'm guessing it probably wasn't raining, given our history. Anything there that we can learn? Because this was a big loss, big impact to the customer, big loss of water. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, that amount of water that fast, that should have been a dead giveaway unless you're next to a drainage ditch where it's hard to see. But they said they noticed it as they were backing out of their driveway on the notes. Unless for some reason they're always inside, you never know. It depends on how often these people leave or not.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harshberger.
So in the recommendation, you credit the week as being 109,000 gallons. Can you walk through which dates and times make up that 109,000, how that was determined?
Let's see. I had this up on an Excel spreadsheet, so, 12/22, 22 at 11, all the way to 12/31, 22 at 11. And then after the first time the water got turned off, that's basically what I was starting that at, because that was when they first found out that they had a leak. And then turn it back on, and then turn it off, and turn it back on again.
So after it was off for those 3 hours when they were checking for the leak and then they turned it back on, not having found one, did you count in that 109,000 that next period of time up until January 2nd?
No, I cut it off right there at 12/31.
What was the thinking there?
That they knew about it. Even though they knew about it, they turned it back on, they knowingly turned it back on, knowing that it's gonna be a higher bill.
Yeah, but the statement says they turned it off because they thought they heard some noise and then they didn't hear it anymore and didn't find any water. And then it was a couple more days before they actually saw the leak. Does that match your understanding?
Yes.
Okay, and then the statement that they turned it back on because they needed the water, that was January 3rd and following, is that correct?
They turned it back on January 2nd to the 3rd, yes. No, that was the time it was off, yeah, January 3rd was when they turned it back on until it finally got fixed. Missing the page.
So about 18 hours worth of time it was back on, I suppose? Because it looks like the leak stopped or was repaired at, around midday on the 4th.
Yes. Like 1 o'clock?
And then the customer stated that they were unable to get a repair person out before that, which, given the holiday and the fact there was a freeze around that time period, because I went through the same problem. Does that match your understanding, that that was the earliest they could get the repair?
Yes.
All right, did you guys get a chance to look at the system? Was there any other capability to have water in the house and still cap that outside line without a plumber?
No, I didn't go out there and look at their house.
So in other words, if they turned that water back on, there was no way they could avoid reactivating the leak?
Correct.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions or any, okay, go ahead.
I've read that, I'm a little confused, but the leak was near the meter?
I'm not sure where it was.
I thought
near.
that's what I read in here.
There was something about, in May, they had a repair
Right,
near their meter, but a meter got replaced.
yes, meters replaced is what she talks about. But I gathered from that, I thought it was near the meter, and I was wondering how'd they turn the water off without noticing a leak in that vicinity?
I'm not
Anyhow, I don't know, that's a question we can get answered. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other further questions on this, it'd be time to make a recommendation.
You want to discuss it, or you're just looking for a recommendation?
Sure, we can discuss it, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, I would have liked to have seen options for what level of partial credit we were going to award. I mean, and the reason I say that is the purpose of the leak adjustment is to provide equitable relief. We have the rate set so that any water we still charge the customer is charged at the Tier 2 rate, which fully covers more or less fully covers the cost of the water to the city. So the city is not out anything if the leak request is granted. It's just water that would not have gone through the meter otherwise. It does put a load on the system, I will admit that, but I'm just trying to figure out when would have been the best time to say, now you really should have left the water off, and you didn't have a way to do it differently. If they didn't get an AMI notice, and they're not going outside their house much, it's completely conceivable that they wouldn't notice the water leaking. We've had plenty of that before we had the AMI system, so I think those are two completely different issues. And I'm not sure we have a good number yet to settle on. I'm not opposed to it. And I'm pretty sure the council's going to want the lower number. But just in my mind, I haven't quite sorted out what part is the leak and what part the customer should be responsible for. So I'd like to hear other people's opinions on that.
Anyone else have an opinion on this?
I agree with your statements about the couple not getting out much, and we do have, and I can't say this with a straight face anymore, an elderly population that doesn't always get out of the house. They heard the leak. Should they have done more due diligence in trying to locate? I mean, with this leak, you'd walk around your yard and even if you had shoes on, you'd probably notice it. So I don't know if they went and checked some toilets in the house or what, but it begs the question of what is equitable and how diligent should they have been in trying to locate the leak. when they heard it. I don't think that helps answer your question at all.
No, but that's the essence of it.
So we've had plenty of leaks in the past, and we really haven't faulted the customer for delayed detection. That is part of the reason for the AMI system, and you heard the city staff is working on that. We'll keep getting down to that, and we'll follow up on that. But I don't think we've ever held it against a customer that perhaps they should have seen this leak sooner or anything like that. Now, there's a question about turning the leak or turning the water back on, knowing that there's a leak. I was trying to read through Ordinance 54. I didn't find anything that is necessarily criminal or anything on that. But certainly, it is sort of customers, if they're knowingly turning it back on with a leak, obviously a concern there. I think Stephen did a reasonable job of determining where that cut was without trying to get overly complicated on that. But by all means, if we want to continue to look at this, we don't have to take action on this tonight. But someone needs to work on this in the next month and determine whether all this stuff is, do the math and determine and look into this. I'm not willing to just say pass and then we come back a month later and discuss this. I'd like a couple people to volunteer. If we're going to not take action, then I do want a couple people to volunteer to work with the city staff to make sure we get all of our questions answered as we before the next meeting.
I would offer, I don't know that we need to do that because the process says if we're unable to determine the actual amount of the leak, we can look at the past data and use like the 3 months that surround it or an average over the year. So there's numerous ways, and as Stephen pointed out, the customers used very little water outside of this. So even looking at the same time period the year before is, 10, 11,000. The highest on the whole page is 16,000. So I'd be comfortable just saying customers responsible for 16,000 gallons. If we were to redo it, I'd simply say I probably would have recommended allowing the customer credit for that period of leak that was after the 3-hour shut off, but not giving them credit for the part where they turned it on intentionally. And that might have added back, might get it down to 20,000 gallons. So I think it's equitable either way. We're certainly helping the customer the way the city staff has recommended doing so. I just think that we could consider using the process where you can't determine the amount of the leak and just look at the averages and make the recommendation. Ultimately, council's going to decide what they want to do anyway. So, if I'm the only one who feels kind of strong about it, then I'm willing to let it go with the city staff recommendation. I agree, it's a lot of work put in there already. I'm asking you gentlemen to consider which one you think is the most equitable approach.
And I would have to agree. Turning the water back on would have been in their mind a necessity, I'm sure. Depends how many facilities you have in the house, but once you've filled them all, you probably want to flush them. I don't know if you have to turn the water back on for the day to do that. So I would be a little more lenient. I'm not sure where the point is. It'd be more consistent with what we've done in the past to do the average and the 16,000 and then credit the customer with the rest. So I would agree with that.
Michelle, can we pull up the spreadsheet and run the numbers for 16K, please? Customer consumption of 16,000, what that looks like.
Might take about 3 days for the computer to do it for you, but we'll get there.
Better than me doing math in public. So.
My 2 cents would be if, once they determine the leak, they shut off, fine, you know, give them credit for that. Once they turn it on, if they had an option, especially if they, such a major leak, they could have gone into a hotel, especially as much as water they're using. They had options. The fact is that they turned it back on. Now the problem's on their side now.
Sorry, run it with the water bill was 149, the leak should be 133, and customer consumption of 16. You just throw that in the spreadsheet, let's see what that,
No.
Don't they have to pay the first 20,000? Is my question.
okay, put it in for 20, yeah, you're right.
So Dan, what's wrong with, still something wrong.
Click it off there so it'll calculate. I don't think it calculated yet. Showing customer pays 718 for 20,000 gallons, that doesn't.
It's something about right.
And I don't think the difference is going to be that significant. I think Stephen's calculations were generous, to say the least. And it may be simply be, well, looking a little more generous, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in the bill.
No, I don't either, but just, again, at the danger of math in public, as the chair indicated, that last block
But over
in very
59,000.
round terms is around
$59.
19,000. So if we took the 19 off of 40, that's 21, so putting it at 20 is pretty darn close to probably what happened, so. I can live with either one. It's not gonna make a huge difference because of the fact they pay full rate for the first 20,000, so, you know, it's a small amount, but it's something. And I agree, they had other options. There are other choices that could have been made. It's just, I don't know that that's not replacing our judgment for theirs, you know, based on what the rules and the ordinance say.
Are we good with the math so far?
it's not going to open. There we go.
So it's about a $60 difference, whether we give them credit for essentially the full leak versus not. Am I getting this right? All right. Thank you. So if someone wanted to make a motion, and they would say something like, recommend to City Council a water loss adjustment for 9902 Michelle Hill for the billing period of December 22nd, 22 to January 23rd, 2023, in the amount of $1567.24 if you wanted to give full credit, or $1507.94 if you wanted to go with the original recommendation from the city staff.
You're gonna make me say that all over again, aren't you?
Indeed, I am.
Anyway,
Can I just say ditto?
I will make a motion that we recommend to the city council to grant to the customer at 9902 Michelle Hill a leak adjustment credit in the amount of $1,567.24.
So we have a recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a recommendation and a second. Time for discussion. So basically what we've done here, everybody's, I think we've talked about this, but we are going with the higher number like we had talked about earlier rather than the lower number. I will keep the lower number in my back pocket in case council does ask what the difference might be. I'll be prepared to discuss all of that. But are we comfortable with essentially a full leak adjustment out of that for this customer based on all the things that we have said? Over on the left?
I'm probably more comfortable with that. It's more consistent with our rulings in the past, or our recommendations in the past, I should say. I agree, they could have gone to a motel, they could have cycled the water off and on. In the past, people could have done different things as well. So I would agree, I'm comfortable.
Any additional discussion on the right? All right. Then let's go ahead and put it to a vote for the leak adjustment of $1,567.24. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right. We have that pass. Did I miss anything procedurally from folks that were on there? There's a lot going on. All right. Great. That brings us to item number D, future agenda items. I already have the commissioner input on agenda items that we're going to follow up on. Let's call it AMI lessons learned on the leak adjustment for 9902 Michelle Hill. We'll add that to the agenda for next month so we can follow up that and just see what's going on and see if there's anything we can do in the future to prevent these kind of things. I have some ideas that I will shoot to the city staff afterwards on how we can, some things that we should probably cover on that. Are there any other recommendations for future agenda items on the left? On the right? Go ahead, sir.
Maybe it's swept up in the agenda item that the chairman just talked about, but I'd be interested in knowing more about our notification system in general. I think we have 1,700 meter installations, but if I look at the data, I think 750 are set up for notifications or profile established. I may be wrong on that, but I'm concerned that we've got a fantastic system. It's been in place. Whatever stuff has happened probably has shaken out, and is it time to go back out to the city as we enter the period of high irrigation usage with I don't say re-education, but re-information to make sure everybody's profile is current, that people are
So the agenda
signing-
item is to look into the,
Yeah.
an education process, or?
Well, it's, one, I want my numbers that I've crunched
Yeah,
affirmed.
we
It looks
can't
like-
discuss it, we're just going to nail down what
Right.
we're going to talk about. so.
Yeah, I would say the meter notification process, I'd like to understand more about that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, how about the meter notification process and recommendations for improvement or something like that?
Okay. I wrote on 2 sheets of paper. My papers were off center. Got it. I just got to hold my 2 sheets of paper together for all my
Can
notes.
we add, and I hate to even say this, knowing who the chairman of the education committee is, but add an education component to that and
I got
maybe
it.
get that booth for market days that we've been yapping about.
Okay. So I've got an agenda item for AMI lessons learned from this leak adjustment, a agenda item for understanding the meter notification process and recommendations for improvement, and then a separate but related action item on education process and how we can get the word out a little bit better on some of these items. That cover everything from everybody?
Got room for one more, if you want to put it there. I don't know if it's appropriate yet, but.
I think I might be gone next month, but keep going, yeah.
No, well, you wanted, I'm not exactly sure how it dropped off, but the issue for being able to formally discuss and make any recommendations one way or the other on the ordinance 61 irrigation windows at the various stages, right? The original question was whether or not that should be adjusted, and we probably need an agenda item
Okay.
to do that one way or another.
So that was on our agenda in January, and we decided not to make any adjustments until we talked to city staff. So appropriate to bring it back on since we've talked to city staff. All right, I've got those 4 items. Anything else? Okay. The date, time, and location for the next meeting is May 16th at 6 p.m. right here in City Hall. And we are to item number 5, citizen comment period. And no one has to be signed up for this. Any citizen comments? All right. All right, so that concludes our agenda. That puts us on item number 6, adjournment. So, motion?
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. This meeting's adjourned at 7:09 PM. Thank you.